Okay, coming up next, opening up your images and setting up your document in Photoshop. So you want to go to the dock of your computer. You'll see it down there. It's a big PS for Photoshop. You'll click on that down in your dock and Photoshop will open and you'll see something open just like this. Okay. Now, when you want to create a new document, you will go and hit Create New. So hit Create New. And then you'll see a bunch of options come up right here, okay? So we're gonna actually print these out when we're done someday, but we'll keep them for print right now. And in the instructions that I gave you on the website, we're gonna call this, my initials, FM _ surreal portrait, okay? But I gave you specific instructions that we'll do 8.5 by 11. I'm gonna do a landscape, so I want it to be wide. And I'm gonna do 150 DPI, which is fine, good enough for printing, with my white background. Not sure if I said 8 by 10 or 8.5 by 11, but let's just do 8.5 by 11 because that's a standard piece of paper. You can go larger if you want, 11 by 17, 11 by 14. I guess your project will dictate that on what you're going to do. So just make sure when you start to do this, you're going to be able to make sure you're shaped the right way. If you have all these images you want to stack this way and your files that way, it's not going to work. So let's just do that. Letter, and we're going to hit Create. Now we have this document open, and it's white. It's plain white background. So now what we can start to do, okay? I am kind of a fan of this. I like to sometimes work one at a time, or you can drag them all over at once. So let's just drag them all over at once and see what happens. I'm going to drag these here, and what you should see start to happen is all of these images are going to load one by one, and they're all going to stack on top of each other. And that's what we talk about. Remember, we've mentioned this before. We talk about layers, because now this is going to be multiple layers on top. So every time something gets on top, so what do you see? You only see one picture, right? You double click, the next one will come up. Double click, the next one will come up, and so on and so forth until you get everything you want. Now, if that's a little confusing to you, not a problem. Just drag them over one at a time. It's not a big deal. So now you're like, well, geez, how am I supposed to work on this right now? Well, just do what I do. I work with layers, and if you look over here on the right, you will see the different layers that were all dragged over, okay? So this is going to be like really, really helpful to help keep things organized. And as you can see, I got everything I need right here. So we could just start going down the line and see the eyeball. You can start turning them all off one at a time. And then now we're going to start to figure out how we're going to lay this out, okay? So the one thing that's really important, you created a new document, right? But you didn't save it yet. So make sure you hit Command Save, and it's going to say, well, what is this file and where do you want to save it? So I already created a file on my desktop. It's called Surreal Portrait. So I'm going to open that up, and it's called FM _ surreal portrait.psd. That's really important to remember. That means Photoshop document. That means all of your files are now layered and stacked on top of each other. So only Adobe Photoshop is going to be able to look at this file. So it's in there. Here's all my originals. You always want to keep your originals. And then here's my new one. I'm going to hit Save. Okay? So now, once again, we can jockey through the layers and start to figure out, how do I want to start laying these things out? What sizes do I want to do? So obviously, I want to put everybody on the surface of the moon. So that will be the image that I start with, okay? So we're going to wrap this video now. Coming up next is how to actually trace everything out, resize, and start to position everything. Stay tuned.